It was a really nice Shabbat in shul this week. In the sanctuary, we had the chance to celebrate as Ezra Inspector became bar mitzvah. He did a great job. And the shul was also able to welcome another family from the community whose own shul couldn't accommodate them during COVID-19. So we welcomed the Black family as well. And just before Shabbat, I received news that Cheryl and Sam Cole had twin grandsons born to them. And the parents I married just as COVID was beginning. So it was a really nice moment for me to see them get married and then have these twin boys. And while we have these moments of joy, I want to share that this was actually for me a pretty hard week. We are all experiencing the challenges of this pandemic in different ways. Many of you have trusted me with your own struggles, and I thank you for your trust. I officiated at one devastating funeral where COVID played an important role, and zoomed into another for our longtime member Zelda Jonas, which I would have attended in person in any other circumstance. The visions from Washington, D.C. still bounce around my head, and I fear for not just the potential violence of the week ahead, but for the future of the United States, where civil discourse based on trust and facts is replaced by growing enmity. Feelings come fact, and conspiracies. Turning to the Cutlers, my children are home from school this week, and next week, and likely for many weeks to come. And I'm now working from home as well. I give tremendous credit to the teachers who are doing just a tremendous job in a difficult reality. But I have one child with special needs who can only look at a screen for 30 seconds before he is distracted by the computer and immediately shifts to something else. A second child whose emotional fragility is greatly increased by his inability to spend playtime outdoors with friends. And a toddler whose joy of having her whole family home with her all day is only matched by her pleasure in finding and destroying pretty much everything. And we have it easier than many. Deborah does not work full-time and is available to support the kids. I still receive a regular paycheck. We're not locked inside our unit in a retirement facility for weeks on end. We are healthy and do not have to put ourselves into harm's way. I wonder, as we all do, when this is over, what will nevertheless stick around? What perhaps positive developments will stay in our lives, and just as importantly, what negative symptoms, personal and societal, may linger, oozing slowly into the decades ahead? We'd like to say that when this is all over and done with, that we will leave it all behind. The fear, the financial collapse, the fading friendships. But the future likely won't allow for such a neat break with the past. As the plagues themselves in this week's Parsha show, what is bad tends to stick around even after we declare its demise. When the Nile turned to blood, it wasn't just terrifying an attack on an Egyptian deity. It was also the destruction of the ecosystem's most important water source. All the fish died. While the waterway would eventually rehabilitate, it would take years for the Nile Delta to once again be healthy. And was also a theological challenge, for the Nile was a representation of an Egyptian deity. And suddenly, if the Nile isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing, if instead of bringing life it is bringing death, what does that say about your faith, your religion, your ability to hold on to something greater than yourself? At the end of the second plague, while some frogs made their way to the Nile, others died in the houses, the courtyards, and the fields. The Torah tells us they piled them up in heaps until the land stank. The plague was technically over, but its consequences continued. Like the maintenance workers at the Capitol this week, The local community were forced to pile and discard unwanted trash. Once, though, this was done, the physical environment returned to its prime. The kinim, lice or some type of swarm of insects, came, devastated, and left. The destruction stopped the moment they disappeared. The livestock died in Arov, the fourth plague, and much of what was on land was destroyed by pestilence, the fifth. The boils came and went, no longer giving damage, save for the scars and the traumatic memory of what once was. Finally, for this parasha, the hail was destructive in its time, but left no ongoing effects. Some plagues cause discomfort, if not disaster, while they are present. But once they are gone, they're gone. Others, though, seem to linger. The breakup isn't clear. More work is needed to remove it from our midst. Some leave space for regrowth, but others may destroy a region for decades to come. I find this framework helpful because it helps me understand what I should be looking for. First, I'm hopeful that some kind of silver lining can be drawn out of all of this. The extra time spent on the phone checking in with members, eating lunch, my whole family together during the week. That never happens. But I'm also aware of the need, where appropriate, to immediately move and say that that was then and this is now. At the same time, sometimes plagues linger. Their consequences may not even be known for decades to come. These plagues in Egypt certainly left an indelible mark on their lives, as well as COVID-19 on ours. As we can begin to see a light at the end of the tunnel, I urge you to imagine what some of the positive things that came out of it you can continue, what negative things you will intentionally leave behind, and how you can prepare for a future where its effects will last for many years to come. Shabbat Shalom.